I love how kids tell the truth. It's hot in here. They also tell the truth about how many are here. 5,000. You know that the conference in the district want to report each week of how many people are here. Let's see if they really read it. Nobody will believe 5,000, but they might believe 5,001. 5,001. So if we get a call, we'll tell you. This feeding of the 5,000 story lives in the Christian imagination. It lives in the collective imagination. Even people outside the church are familiar with the story of the feeding of the 5,000. You'll see churches that have food pantries, and some of them will be named Loaves and Fishes Food Pantry. If you have what seems to be a shortage and all of a sudden there's enough, people will say it's the loaves and fishes all over again. Loaves and fishes, the feeding of the 5,000. This came home to me when I was a teenager, the first time I went to the annual youth retreat, Resurrection. Some of you all have been to Resurrection. It's our conference, the United Methodist Church, sponsors this retreat. It's in Pigeon Forge. It used to be in Gatlinburg. The very first time that I went to it, they were expecting a big crowd, and then they found out they were going to have a bigger crowd of kids than they had even expected. They were expecting 4,000, but the registration that year was 5,000. Well, the weekend culminates on Saturday night. There's an opportunity for students to make a commitment to Christ. And then on Sunday morning, we share in Holy Communion. It's this amazing experience. All of these teenagers and these adults sharing in Holy Communion together. Well, the crowd was bigger than expected. And they had only bought bread for about 4,000 people. And so as we start into communion, the speaker comes out on the stage and says, I'm so sorry, but we underbought on the bread, and there's so many of you servers, you may need to give a smaller amount of bread to everybody so that we don't run out. And I don't know what happened, whether somebody ran back to their cabin or somebody ran across the street to CVS, but they came running into the building and up on the stage. Have you ever tried to empty the groceries from your car and come in where you try to get all the bags at once, like one bag on each finger? They came in carrying bags and bags of loaves of bread, and they ran up on stage, and the speaker said, never mind, give them as much as you want. And people were sort of whispering to each other, it's the feeding of the 5,000, it's the feeding of the 5,000. There's a Christian author, consultant, leadership guru. His name is Gil Rendle. And a few years back, Gil Rendle was working with a group of leaders on a particular project. He was their guide. He was their coach. They had to produce a document, a plan. He wasn't doing it for them, but he was their guide. And so he asked questions, facilitated discussion. And they were at the table working furiously. They were on a deadline, and he would just sort of walk around, look over their shoulder, and listen. As the deadline got closer, he would stop and he would say, friends, there isn't much time, so work slowly. Now, isn't that a strange thing to say? There isn't much time, so work slowly. What in the world did he mean? I think what he meant is, you don't have much time, so take your time, because you don't want to rush. If you panic and you rush, what might happen? All the good work that you've done over the past couple of days may be squandered. All the wisdom that you've gathered and collected and distilled may just go up in smoke. There isn't much time, so work slowly. I think something like that is happening here in the feeding of the 5,000. By the way, when Glenn read it, it says there were 5,000 men there. There's another gospel that says there were 5,000 men, not including women or children. So it may have been, you probably heard somebody say before, it may have not just been 5,000. If everybody brought a spouse, brought children, it could be 15, 20, 25,000, 30,000. It could have been like that crowd that ran out onto the field after Florida State beat Alabama. Never mind. A big old crowd of people. A big old crowd of people. But Jesus says, the crowd is huge. You don't have enough, so share it anyway. The crowd is huge. You don't have enough, so share it anyway. We forget that one of the most important things about this story is that Jesus says to the disciples, you give them something to eat. They're looking at the clock. He's been teaching all afternoon. It's been a good day. A lot of good things have happened, but it's getting close to dinner time. And the disciples say, Lord, you better dismiss the crowd, send them into the town. They can get a hotel. They can go to the Waffle House. They can do whatever they need to do. They can get their dinner, but we don't have enough to feed them. You give them something to eat. We don't have enough. We have what? 5 loaves and 2 fish. We don't have enough. You share what you have, and when they do, everybody has enough. Not just enough, there were leftovers. Did anybody catch how many leftovers there were? 12 baskets. That number 12 is a good biblical number, isn't it? Isn't it? That's a sign that there was more than enough. The word share is really important for our church. We have 3 core values. You'll see them on our website, on our coffee mug. Sometimes we see it here on the bulletin. Worship, love, and share. Worship, love, and share. We think those are the words that we want to order our life around. A core value is the kind of thing that states who you are and who you want to become. A core value tells you how to model your behavior. A core value names the kind of culture that you want to live out. It helps you make decisions. And so our core values are worship, love, and share. I worry about the world today that we've forgotten how to share, which is unfortunate. Like many of you in the room, I was raised, especially in preschool and kindergarten, they taught us that little rhyme, sharing is caring. You share what you have, and don't tug, don't fight over the toy with your friend there. Share, like Lindsay. Don't fight over the cookie. Share. I worry that we've forgotten as a culture how to share. You wouldn't know that sharing is an essential part of being human. I think it's true that sharing is an essential part of being human. We wouldn't know how to live as people if we couldn't share. But to look at the world today, you wouldn't know it. The way of life in this culture discourages sharing, and it trains us to share very, very little. But Jesus shows us what it means to be human. One of the great affirmations of the Christian faith is that Jesus is fully God and fully human. Fully God and fully human. I want you to linger over that statement, fully human, for just a second. Fully human means that Jesus shows us what fully God means that Jesus shows us what God is like. But fully human means that Jesus shows us what it means to be fully alive. And when we don't share, we're not living fully alive. Now, as Appalachian people, as Southern Appalachian people, not Appalachian people, God bless you, but Appalachian people, we know, don't we, a little bit about how to share. We know that when a member of someone's family dies, what they need most is a casserole. I heard recently there was a death in the community, and the family had been up all night at the hospital, and we're talking to the funeral home, talking to hospice and everything. 7:30 the next morning, a neighbor is knocking, and they come out bleary-eyed. What is it? I had to get you this potato casserole. We know how to share. We know how to share. We know that anyone can lose their job. Anyone can get sick. Anyone and everyone gets to a point in life where you can't do the things that you used to be able to do. And so we share. Over the course of my life, I've known lots of people, many of who've gone on to glory, but were born a long, long time ago. And they often would say to me, I grew up poor, but we didn't know we were poor. Have you ever heard somebody say that? I grew up poor, but we didn't know we were poor. Do you know what I think they mean by that? I grew up poor, but we didn't know we were poor means I had a roof over my head, and I had plenty of food on the table. Now, the roof might have leaked, and all 17 of my brothers and sisters and I may have lived in the same bedroom, but we had a roof over our head, and we might have had small portions, but we always had enough to eat. Why? Why did these folks feel like they had plenty even though they were poor? I'm no expert on anything, let alone sociology, culture, but I think one of the reasons that folks like that can say, I grew up poor, but we always had enough, is they learned how to share. They learned how to share. I've known a lot of people whose lives were touched by the Great Depression. Have you? I've known people whose lives were marked by the Great Depression. It left a scar. It's like a scar on your hand or your face that you look at every day. My grandparents on both sides were marked by the Depression, and they passed some of that on through my parents to me. And so to this day, one of the marks of the Depression on my life is I don't like to throw food away. I If I have to throw food into the trash, I want to have a funeral for it. It makes me very, very sad. I clean my plate. My clean plate is a happy plate. Every morsel matters. That's one of the things that got passed down to me. I knew a woman who's since died who grew up in her childhood was in the heart of the Depression, and she grew up very close to a train station. And she would tell me how at her home dining room table, there were always 2 or 3 extra places because her mother knew that people might wander over from the train station. Back then they called them hobos, people who were down on their luck, who were riding the rails. And she said, we ate 3 or 4 nights a week with strangers at our table. My mom just fixed a little bit extra and put out a couple of extra plates. Maybe you've known somebody like that. Maybe you've known somebody like that. That Great Depression taught her how to share. Probably should acknowledge that sharing can be hard. Sharing can be hard because trust is hard. If you share and somebody does something good with what you shared, that's great. But if you share and they throw it away or they treat it poorly, what does that do? It breaks trust. Sharing can be hard because it can be hard to trust. And I realize that sharing is something we have to learn how to do and when to do and how much to share. I get all that. But what I want to caution us against is growing cynical. A life lived without sharing and generosity is no life at all. If you can't share, if you can't be generous, you know what you are? You're suspicious. You're living in scarcity. You live with fear. I think that's a dark way to live. I think that's a grim way to live. Even the posture of it. We teach the children when they come up for Holy Communion, how do we come? We come with open hands. Why do we do that? Because we receive the gift of God. And that's how we live. We live to receive and live to give. Think about the opposite of that posture. The opposite of that posture is what? I'm going to hold on to what's mine. Get away from me. And it's not too far from this to this. And if you get near my stuff, I'm going to swing. I don't know about you. I want to live like this. Don't you? I want the church to live like this. I want to see more of this in the world. Let me show you something that's in this passage that you might have missed. When Jesus feeds the 5,000, they give Jesus the 5 loaves of bread. And this is what Luke 9:16 says. It says, he took the bread, he blessed it, he broke it, and gave it to them. Does that sound familiar? Wait a minute, let me say it again. He took the bread, he blessed the bread, he broke the bread, and gave it to them. What does that sound like to you? Well, if you look ahead in chapter 22, verse 19, when Jesus gathers for his last supper with his disciples, when he institutes the Lord's Supper, it says at that meal, he had bread. Do you know what he did with that bread? He took it, he blessed it, he broke it, he gave it. I didn't think I was going to write a song today, but he took it, he blessed it, he broke it, he gave it. If you go ahead to chapter 24, verse 30, Jesus is raised from the dead and he appears to 2 disciples on the road to Emmaus. They don't know it's him. They don't recognize him until he sits at a table and he has some bread in his hand. Do you know what he does? He takes it, blesses it, breaks it, and gives it. That's the way of Jesus. That's the way of Jesus. We call this meal that we share in when we gather at this table, sometimes we call it Holy Communion, sometimes we call it the Lord's Supper. Has anybody ever heard it called Eucharist? Now that sometimes sounds like a fancy top shelf word. No, it is a good word. And it doesn't just mean communion. Do you know what the word Eucharist actually means? It means thanksgiving. You remember the name of the prayer that we say right before we gather at the table? The great what? Thanksgiving. We're thankful for the blessings that we have received. It's the way of Jesus. Again, I'm no sociologist. I'm no political philosopher. I'm no expert on anything. But here's what I know. When Jesus had power, what did he do with it? He shared it. When Jesus had food, what did he do with it? He shared it. When Jesus had wellness and health and somebody didn't, what did he do? He shared wellness and health and well-being with them. When he had life and he was full of life, how did he live? He shared his life. He shared it to the fullest. He shared it all the way to the cross, all the way through the cross to the resurrection, and he shares that life with us today in his presence with us. I consider it to be one of the greatest honors of getting to do the work of pastoral ministry and get to call it work, that I get to spend time with people in all different stages of their lives, but it is a deep and holy honor to get to be with people at the end of their lives. I've been with people at the very end. I've been with people a couple of days before they've died. There was one man that I went to visit about 2 days before he died. And he was a great man. He was a saint of a man. He'd been a pillar of the church, pillar of the congregation, pillar of the community. Very quiet, very humble. And I'll never forget what he said to me. I want you to remember, this is a man on his deathbed. He said, I came into this world with nothing. Everything that I have, I only have because I received. It was given to me. Somebody taught me how to walk. Somebody taught me how to tie my shoe. Somebody taught me how to feed myself. They taught me how to read. Everything that I have, even the things that I've done for myself, I have because somebody showed me and invested in me. I had nothing. Everything I have, I received. It's all from God. And he died the way he'd lived, like this, like this. When I was a kid, we had evening church. I liked evening church. I'm not saying we want to start it back. Don't come here at 7 o'clock tonight. There'll be no service. You can come in and pray, but we won't be here for service. But when I was a kid, we would have evening church, and only a few would show up for evening church. Does anybody remember evening church? Only a few would show up for evening church, and it was like the most dedicated of the dedicated. Sometimes you got the sense maybe they were showing off a little bit. They would come out at 7 o'clock on a Sunday night, still wearing their coat and tie from early in the morning. They just wait. It's like they went home and they're waiting all day to go back to church. It just sometimes make you sick. But anyway, they would come. We would have evening church, and we would sing the old hymns. We would take requests for the old hymns. The preacher would sometimes preach a recycled sermon, but that was okay. We'd come up and we'd kneel at the altar rail. And then that little group, which was the core of the core of the core of the church, they'd been through thick and thin together, through ups and downs. They had fought, led, loved, cried, all of those things together. They would circle up and they would hold hands. And they would close every service by singing, and maybe you know it. Blessed be the tie that binds our hearts in Christian love, the fellowship of kindred minds is like to that above. What you may not know is the third verse starts like this. We share each other's woes, our mutual burdens bear, and often for each other flows a sympathizing tear. He took the bread, blessed the bread, broke the bread, gave the bread, shared his life, and asks us to do the same. Thanks be to God. Amen.